In the television series, it was this double-headed llama with one head at one end and the other head at the other end, going in opposite directions. If you actually go and read the description, it's a little bit more fierce, more gazelle-like with horns. Right? People of a certain age, and as I look around the theater, there are a couple of us in here. We know this creature that people often imagined over 100 years ago and first described in the story of Dr. Dolittle. Revised versions of the text have been washed of the pro-colonial attitudes and unfortunate African caricatures that surround Dr. Dolittle. The Pushmi-Pullyu, however, has survived in modern tellings. The two heads of this fantastical creature are constantly wishing to go in opposite directions. The fictional animal that Dr. Dolittle brings home from Africa serves as a metaphor for having two opposing goals that are inherently contradictory. You know, like doing well on tomorrow's chemistry test, or staying late tonight so you can crush Black Myth Wukong. Though they are the rarest animal of all, there is another Pushmi-Pullyu out there. And it lives even in these modern times. About 60 miles north of here, in the deep recesses of an MIT lecture hall, this footage of a different Pushmi-Pullyu was taken. This one's not a double-headed llama gazelle thing, but instead two small carts that are connected to each other while they slide over a frictionless surface. The frictionless surface is an air track, much like an air hockey table. The carts are held together by two springs. One spring is compressed, while the other is stretched. The compressed spring will extend in order to come to equilibrium, or balance. Unfortunately, this further stretches the already stretched spring. At a certain point, the overly stretched spring has had enough, and it can't take it anymore. It starts to pull back together, which then begins to compress the spring that just went through all that trouble of getting uncompressed. Well, enough of that, and the compressed spring pushes back once again, and back and forth we go. A real push-me-pull-you situation where neither side knows which way the other wants to go, and the two goals seem to be in constant opposition. We have all had these whiplash experiences where two opposing forces are at work simultaneously. The poker player in me remembers running hot back in September, where it seemed like I drew and flopped perfect cards for hours on end, stacking and stacking chips. Of course, I hit that cooler to the donkey who should never have been in this spot in the first place. And soon thereafter, found myself driving home while the game continued, and my chips were in someone else's stack. Statisticians call this reversion to the mean, or regression to the mean. You see this in sports all the time. As a basketball coach, I have witnessed a star player have the game of her life against an arch rival, seemingly making every shot she took, only to miss the game-tying free throw that would have sent the contest to overtime. Of course, every reversion to the mean story has two sides. My opponent at the poker table was aghast at my 2-hour lucky streak, until he eventually hit that one card to make his first good hand of the night. The rival coach could not believe how many shots our star player was making, and she was visibly relieved when the star finally missed one. These pendulum swings, of course, can have much higher stakes than a poker game between a bunch of teachers, or the outcome of a high school basketball game on a Friday night in January. Imagine the aging couple who has patiently and deliberately invested for decades in preparation for retirement, only to experience a stock market crash the week after they leave their jobs, and they find a large portion of their life savings have suddenly vanished. The stakes can reach national and international levels. We heard about Isle Royale and Moose and Wolves, a true reversion to the mean situation. Right? Imagine being Prime Minister Rishi Sunak or members of his Conservative Party in the UK. watching their 14-year control of Parliament washed away in a landslide defeat this past summer. Of course, actors are working to push the pendulum back as Kemi Badenoch is looking to put the word conservative back into the Conservative Party. And Nigel Farage is stoking fears of conservative voters and getting more and more support for his Reform UK party. More recently, Chancellor Olaf Scholz of Germany's Social Democratic Party is seeing his coalition government collapse around him. This all comes while the Alternative to Germany party has been gaining support by highlighting economic challenges as well as immigration policies they find objectionable. Closer to home, Justin Trudeau has been considering running for his 4th term as Prime Minister of Canada. But his Liberal Party has now lost control of the House of Commons and is now in a minority. Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party has been pushing a populist agenda and gaining support. Many are asking Trudeau to step down so that he does not drag his party further down with him. Years of support and success can suddenly be brought to a halt and reversed by opposing forces. And years of disappointment and dissatisfaction can just as quickly be brought around as the political party you support comes to power. Whether it's the effects of Brexit, refugees fleeing over your borders, or the surging crisis of healthcare, dissatisfied voters are swinging pendulums all over the world. There is no doubt that these transitions can be fast and jarring, whether the regression to the mean moves in your favor or away from you. But to me, I get help by thinking of that Pushmi-Pullyu. Not that llama nightmare thing that I talked about at the beginning, but the spring-loaded carts that nerds up at MIT assembled. Let's take another look. This time, let's focus on the ball that is located at the center of the system. This would be the center of mass, or the center of gravity of the system. The ball is highlighted with fluorescent paint. When illuminated with a black light, the ball glows brightly. While all the back and forth of the carts is happening, watch the ball. It just keeps moving forward. You see, the word balance or equilibrium does not mean stasis. Reversion to the mean does not mean you always go back to where you started. It means your results adhere more closely to the overall trend. And any extreme results or outliers will come back to what is expected. The expected outcome, however, can still be a progression from the previous expected result. What the nerds up at MIT were trying to show is a concept described by Galileo. Galileo went against the Aristotelian view, which held that all objects had a tendency to be at rest. Galileo stated that all objects resist changes in motion. If an object is at rest, it will stay at rest. And if an object is already in motion, it will stay in motion, unless there is some outside action affecting the object. We now know this concept as inertia, and Isaac Newton co-opted this statement to form his first law of motion. Galileo, it turns out, is one of the giants whose shoulders Newton stood upon. The carts in MIT's Pushmi-Pullyu are constantly trying to get back in balance. They oppose each other every inch of the way, but the carts are still making progress. Inertia is real. Once the system is in motion, it will resist any changes in motion. Any financial advisor will tell the retired couple that the stock market crash was a real bummer. But if possible, they should tighten their belts and stick it out a little. The long-term trends in the stock market are undeniable. If I've been playing well at the poker table, I should not change all my tactics because I had one bad beat in the previous game. And I certainly will not tell my star basketball player to stop shooting because of one missed free throw. Now it is time to acknowledge my privilege. I'm a middle-aged white guy who is gainfully employed and leads a comfortable life. I'm fine. Neither my gender identity, my immigration status, or my reproductive rights have been the subject of political debate on any recent ballot measures. I also live in a state where the two-party system has been surprisingly functional, with Republican governors and Democratic legislative bodies able to work together and enact meaningful policies. I also know that there are many, including those very close to me, who are frightened of the recent swings in the pendulum and uncertain about what is to come. It should not come as a surprise that someone who looks like me takes comfort in the work of someone who looks like Galileo. But hear me out. Galileo was like low-key slaying the late Renaissance period. No cap. What he did for the Catholic Church was absolutely savage. Beyond the whole Earth not being the center of the universe thing, we now know from him that objects in motion tend to stay in motion. Whatever social, scientific, or political issues bring you the most anxiety, take a look at the trends that have developed over the past years and decades. Galileo teaches us that it will be hard to stop and reverse the overall motion. Like the stock market, the pendulum may swing, but the long-term trends are undeniable. For those who feel unsafe and uncertain, I hope you have found a community that will support you and help keep you safe. For those of you who feel the pendulum is finally swung in your favor, honestly, which probably do. For everyone, understand that reversion to the mean is a thing. We will constantly experience swings back and forth as whatever system you are considering is trying to find some elusive balance point. What you can do, however, is realize that outside actions, according to Galileo, can affect objects that are already in motion. So act. If the pendulum has swung in your direction, try to expand consensus and keep the overall trend moving in your direction. If the pendulum has swung against you, guess what? Try to build consensus and show how you think the overall trend should move. For many, the sudden back and forth motion of the Pushmi-Pullyu has immediate and life-changing effects. For many more, however, the long-term trends should be the point of focus. The only way that Dr. Doolittle's Pushmi-Pullyu actually goes anywhere is if the two heads work together, at least from time to time. If just working in their own self-interest, the desires of the individual heads of the animal cancel out, and the mythical creature is simply left to the whims of whatever inertia is already experiencing. And I quote, "No cap. What he did to the Catholic Church was absolutely savage." Actually says this on this paper. Who writes this stuff? Tell you the kids these days are so sus.